Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It's an easy question to answer if I ask you what is the biggest, the most significant, the most world-changing terror attack of our times. It is 9/11. In fact, by the time you are watching this episode of Cut the Clutter, you are on the eve of 9/11, 20th anniversary. So within a day, it will be 20 years of 9/11. In fact, that's the reason Joe Biden gave for pulling his troops out before that. He said that before the 20th anniversary of 9/11, he wanted all American troops out because the reason they had gone to Afghanistan was to destroy Al-Qaeda, and that is done. Osama bin Laden is killed, job done, sort of belatedly proclaimed as done, so we are going back home. Now 20 years to 9/11, something else is beginning which is very significant. So let me ask you a follow-up question. Can you tell me who is the most significant terrorist in the world alive and in custody? Now, I know that all of you have sharp GK, so many of you would figure it out, but it's also possible that with time our memory fades. So that is a man called Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, as he is generally called. Just Google KSM and you will see a plethora of information opening up for you. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, about 56 years old, is seen to be the mastermind of 9/11. Not just 9/11, but many other incidents before that, the bad ones, the World Trade Center bombing of 1993, which killed 6 people in New York. Also, the Richard Reed shoe bomber incident, that was a former criminal who had converted to Islam in prison, was caught with bombs packed in the heel of his shoe, heel and sole of his shoe, but that fortunately failed. Also, for another failed plan called Operation Bojinka or Bojinka, I don't know how you put it. I'm told it's a word from Serbo-Croatian language, which means like a big bang. So that was a 1995 plot of 3 simultaneous actions. One was the assassination of Pope John Paul II. The second was the simultaneous bombing of a dozen airliners over Pacific Ocean. That this plot was hatched in the Philippines, in Manila. And third was to get a Cessna, pack it with explosives, and crash it into the CIA headquarters. So that was the first big one, but that was foiled because of an accidental fire where the bombs were being assembled in the Philippines. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the kingpin, he escaped from that point. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is later supposed to have plotted 9/11. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, importantly, is of Pakistani origin. Fully of Pakistani origin, son of a Deobandi cleric who went to preach and teach in Kuwait. He was born there, and 2 of his key accomplices, including Ramzi Yusuf, who was caught and later convicted for World Trade Center bombings, are his nephews. One from the father's side, one from the mother's side. In fact, one of those nephews is now also going to come up on trial with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So 20 years after 9/11, almost as if it's time to perfection. And that is what the defense lawyers are saying, that this is time to perfection, that the Americans are doing it just because it suits them, 20th anniversary of 9/11. But the reason the trial has also got delayed, it's got delayed because of many reasons, including many pleas taken by defense. Most importantly, that a lot of the information obtained against these people, which prosecution is relying on, is obtained through illegal torture, because they've been subjected to extreme forms of torture. In fact, there are lots of accounts, including an article I'm sharing with you by Dexter Filkins in New Yorker, that say that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded 183 times. That is, 183 times he was subjected to torture that simulates the situation of drowning. So basically, you are drowned in water until you think you are dying. And what is called as rectal hydration, which at some point the CIA said is some way of opening up people's mind. People have black humor, right? It doesn't matter whether they're working for the government or they're working for terror organizations. Anyway, so these trials are beginning now. These trials also got delayed over the past couple of years. They were supposed to begin in January of 2020, but then came COVID and everything stopped. Before that, a judge was appointed, and then defense said, it's a military judge, remember the trial will be in a military court, and the defense said that the judge did not have enough experience. He's a lieutenant colonel in the army. So he went back, spent 2 years in army courts dispensing justice so he could get some experience. And he's now back. So what is beginning now on the eve of 9/11, 20th anniversary, is the pre-trial proceedings. This pre-trial stage has been set by the judge from September 7 to September 17. That means for 10 days. This means no evidence will be exchanged, no trial will be held, but the defense counsels, the rest, pre-trial stage, they set up their plans, etc., etc. Then there's a second pre-trial stage. That means this pre-trial stage continues on from November 1 to November 19. And then if the judge so wishes, judge can extend that pre-trial stage. After that, by January or so, US Military Commission will then start deciding on the members of the jury. This is a military trial in a military court. As I told you, the judge is a lieutenant colonel of the army. Then that military commission will decide on the jury, that it may be 12 jury, that will be all serving military officers from US forces. That trial will begin. It's not expected to begin before April. In fact, people still think, a lot of experts think that given the complexities of the trial and given the fact that defense is now mostly relying on the argument that evidence has been obtained illegally through torture, etc., this is going to get very complicated. The trial itself might take more than 2 decades. In fact, it was Barack Obama, and even Biden has been committed to it, who said that he will shut down the Guantanamo Bay prison, or that is Gitmo as it's called, and bring these people into the US for trials. But there was too much of a pushback from US Congress, and there was too much popular revulsion. Nobody wanted these people on the American mainland, and that's how this Guantanamo Bay or Guantanamo Bay has continued being there. There's also a little bit of American hypocrisy there because, from left to right, ultimately they all do the same thing. After all, Obama dropped more bombs, I think, within a year on top of Afghanistan or Afpak region than Bush had done in his entire term. Nevertheless, this trial will take place at a place, again, dark humor, named Camp Justice by the Americans. So Camp Justice had been set up in Cuba, in this Guantanamo Bay facility. Guantanamo Bay was a property, say, in Cuba that was leased to the Americans in 1903, and they continue to own it on the Cuban mainland. It's there. Now, at Camp Justice, this trial will take place. Just yesterday, the authorities there took 15 handpicked reporters for a tour around the facility, so they can see how this trial will take place. They saw the courtroom, which is about 100 by 100 feet, not that big. Where will defense counsel sit? Where will the jury sit? Where will the judge sit? Where will KSM sit? And the other co-defendants behind him. I will tell you about co-defendants. And also, where will they be detained as they are brought in from the facility they are being held, where they are being held a few miles ago. So from there, they'll be woken up at 5, brought in by 6:30. They will be then put up in their cells. Those cells have the arrangement to keep them secure and also to make sure they do no damage to themselves. In fact, this report that I read on ABC News goes into minute details, like saying that in these cells, the mattresses they have no sheets on them, because Guantanamo Bay has had many cases of these inmates committing suicide by using these sheets. So these will be sheetless mattresses. They'll wait there. These are, once again, dark humor. Well-appointed cells. They have an attached toilet. They also have a Qibla sign. That is a sign pointed to Makkah in Saudi Arabia for when the prayer time comes. Now, American legal process is not something that we understand very well. In this case, it's not just the classical American legal process. It's not like a Perry Mason novel. It's not like one of those movies. It is a military court set up under a very special military commission. So in fact, 2001, George Bush first set this up, and later 2006, The Congress modified it with the Congressional Act. 2009, it was again modified. So that's very complicated. It's not so relevant also, except I can tell you that the first arraignment, or what we might call charge sheeting, happened in 2012. So once again, we might say that in the Indian legal system, there are lots of delays, and the American legal system is very quick. Usually it's very quick, but in this case, given the peculiarities of the arrest, of the detainees, of the charges, the classified nature of information, and also the fact of that so much illegal torture has been used, illegal in terms of what can be justified in a trial court. And what is it that vitiates evidence? This has taken a long time and will continue taking a long time, because all these detainees, not just KSM, but also his co-defendants, were all held at CIA black sites, where they were held in secret. They were subjected to the worst kind of torture, forced nudity. I told you about waterboarding, rectal hydration, and lots of other torture techniques, as these were called, or CIA in its own sort of euphemism, chosen euphemism, called it enhanced integration techniques. So as this trial takes place, in fact, there's also been a viewers gallery set up. It's blocked by a soundproof glass. There in one section, 53 up to 53 reporters can sit watching what's going on. And in the remaining section, a large number of relatives and family members of the victims of 9/11. Remember, 2,977 people were killed, 2,977. That's almost 3,000 people were killed in those attacks, mostly in the Twin Towers in New York, but also at the Pentagon, and also there was another plane that crashed elsewhere in mid-flight. So, sabko milake, 2,977 people were killed. So, their families and relations can come and sit. It will be a very complicated trial, because whenever classified material is put up, the prosecution, the defense, etc., and the judge shall have the authority of blocking off anybody from watching or seeing what's going on, or blocking off any recording of evidence. In fact, the trial will be supervised by somebody called CSIO, which is Chief Information Security Officer, who will determine at any point of time what should be classified, what should not be classified. So the other co-defendants with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed are Walid bin Atash, Ramzi bin Al-Shib, Amar al-Baluchi, also known as Abdul Aziz Ali. He is a nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, fully Pakistani like him. Mustafa al-Hawsawi. Now these four are the co-defendants here. I just pick up another little sidelight there that, of the five defendants facing trial, four have accepted to have COVID vaccinations, but one still hasn't. So the judge, as we told you, was actually sent back on defensive objections for a 2-year experience. So he's back. He's Colonel Matthew McCall. He's going to be there. He's in fact going to be the fourth judge to be put on this trial, because one after the other judges have changed. This is a very complex trial. In fact, if I read up the lists of defense counsels, each one of the defendants has a lot of defense counsels, because a lot of the American civil liberties organizations, etc., have come up with their defense purely on the grounds that these have been held without trial and illegally, and tortured illegally, interrogated illegally for more than 20 years. That upsets a lot of people. So that has got a lot of good lawyers come out and defend them. Now in this courtroom, there'll be a hospital bed, God forbid something happens. Also, the chairs on which these defendants will sit, there will be chains running from those chairs to the floor of the courtroom, to hooks in the floor of the courtroom, in case somebody needs to be chained. So this is going to be quite a rough situation there. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was born in Kuwait, studied in America. In fact, he went to North Carolina University of Agriculture and Technology and got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Pakistani parents, I told you, born in Kuwait. Pakistani parents of Baluch extraction. KSM is somebody who's been on the global anti-terror agency's radar for a very long time, much before 9/11 actually happened. So it was in 1995 that he was nearly caught by the FBI. So the FBI agent Frank Pellegrino, who had been in his pursuit since the early 90s, He in fact says that he came very close to catching him around that time when KSM reached Qatar, and he came into Qatar along with his operatives to arrest him with an arrest warrant. But the US ambassador in Qatar said that this will upset the Qataris too badly, don't do it. And sure enough, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed then had the protection of Qatar's Minister for Religious Affairs, and from there he disappeared to Afghanistan, and then it was impossible to find him. Now, that Frank Pellegrino has spoken in detail to the BBC, so I'm also sharing with you this article on the BBC.com, which talks about how close he came to catching him in the mid 90s, and if he had caught him, then maybe 9/11 and some other things might not have happened, because he is also now being arraigned, or he's supposedly confessed under interrogation, which will let us see whether that stands a test of trial or not, for the Bali bombings in Indonesia, for a lot of major terror acts around the world. That's the reason I said number one terrorist alive and in custody in the entire world right now. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, once he knew that the world was chasing him, and after 2001, it was quite evident, particularly after 9/11, that he was such a key terrorist in the world. Remember, Pakistani. Even Ramzi Yusuf, his nephew, who was earlier caught for World Trade Center blasts, Pakistani. Ramzi Yusuf is his alias, right? All these people have aliases. Even if you look at pictures of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed at different points of time, he looks very different, and he's carried multiple passports in his life, but Pakistani. In fact, that's where something that's intrigued me for a long time, I can't help mentioning now, which is that note the timing of the World Trade Center bombings in 1993. That is Feb 26, 1993. You know, February is a short month. Feb 26, 1993. What is the method? A car packed with explosives is parked under the World Trade Center with enough explosives, nearly 700 kilos of explosives, hoping that this will blow up the entire tower and tower will collapse, killing thousands of people. I mean, towers collapsed much later. Once they had the target in their minds, they didn't give it up. But at that point, it failed to bring down the tower, but it killed 6 people. Now, that is Feb 26, 1993. Just 2 weeks from then, exactly 2 weeks after that, on 12th March 1993, what happened in India? Think. On 12th March 1993, the serial bombings took place in Mumbai, or Bombay as it was called then, killing nearly 300 people. Now, we know in India that Dawood Ibrahim, etc., were involved in this. If you look at the two approaches to bombings, they are so similar that it's intrigued me ever since I investigated for India Today magazine, those 1993 Bombay bombings. It's intrigued me that how can it be that there is no connection? Because it's evident that the same minds that were planning the World Trade Center bombings in New York were also planning the Bombay bombings. The same methods, similar explosives, similar targeting of buildings to make the maximum impact economically, and also to shake up the financial community, because in Bombay also, remember, it was the Javeri Bazaar and the Bombay stock market that were targeted. And once again, because these masterminds were all Pakistani, and later a lot of the connections with Pakistan and some sections of the ISI, etc., came out, I'm not somebody who's ever been convinced that Pakistan and ISI did not have everything to do with the Bombay blasts of 1993. So coming back to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he was caught, I'm not saying arrested because arrested has a legal connotation to it, he was caught in a joint ISI-CIA raid in Rawalpindi in February of 2003, and immediately whisked away to CIA's black sites. One of the black sites was then the salt mine site, as it was called, in Afghanistan, and later to Poland. And ever since then, after that, say in about 2006, that is 15 years ago, he was shifted to Guantanamo Bay, and he's been there. Now, he has an interesting life. At the age of 16, he heard a fiery speech by Abdul Rasul Sayyaf, commanders of one of the factions of the Afghan Mujahideen fighting the Soviets, and he got converted to that idea. He joined Muslim Brotherhood in 1982. He was 16, 17 at that time. And then he started working for the organization. And then he was bright enough to get to America to study engineering, as I said. And then all the bio that has come out on him, especially from his biographers, there are movies done on him, documentaries done on him, books done on him. He is quite a character. It looks like even his experience in America convinced him that America was an evil, debauched, as he said, country, and he had to teach it a lesson. And in his case, if you see a lot of the stuff he's done in his life, it was all about what America is doing by way of helping Israel. So one of the things for which he's held responsible is Daniel Pearl's beheading. Daniel Pearl was the Wall Street Journal journalist. The reason I'm mentioning this a bit later in this episode is simply because somebody else in Pakistan was convicted for beheading him, that is Omar Sheikh, who had been released from an Indian prison in exchange for the IC-814 passengers. For those hostages, now once again, tie these threads. Somebody carries out the hijacking of IC-814, right? Somebody has trained all those people in America, all those Al-Qaeda people in America to hijack those planes and to slam them anywhere, right? So somebody has trained these people also to hijack an aircraft. The purpose of those people is set by somebody who is a Pakistani, that is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, working for Al-Qaeda. Now, people who hijack this plane, IC-814, they also want a bunch of people, obviously terrorists, released from Indian prisons. They take the plane to Kandahar. Taliban are in power there. Taliban facilitate it. In fact, the Taliban minister comes out, and just as Masood Azhar comes out of the plane, the Taliban minister goes and hugs him. That minister is going to be a key figure in this Taliban government. And then these people, these terrorists released from Indian prisons, including Omar Sheikh. Remember, he's the one who's been convicted in Pakistan for killing Daniel Pearl, but has now been let off after a series of sort of strange events in Pakistani courts. So once again, if you put all of this together, then it's very difficult to see how there is no connection in all these events. That is World Trade Center blasts in America, in New York, the Bombay bombings, including the stock market building in Bombay 2 weeks after that, then the IC-814 hijack to get these terrorists freed. One of these terrorists then later being involved in the killing of Daniel Pearl, and also the same group, because if Omar Sheikh is involved in the kidnapping and killing of Daniel Pearl, as is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, because he's apparently said in one of his confessions, or quote-unquote confessions, that he said, my blessed arm beheaded American Jew Daniel Pearl, and you can see in pictures my arm holding his severed head. Now FBI, through forensic testing of the vein patterns on that arm, has said that the vein pattern suggests that this is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's arm, but it could be that one has beheaded the person, the other is holding the head, because the head in this case is just a trophy. So you can see that everything is connected. How it's connected? It's a very complex jigsaw, and this trial that begins will be one of the windows through which we might have a way of figuring out exactly what happened. But whatever happens, you will find Pakistan featuring it all over, because even this nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who's under trial with him now, who's a co-defendant with him, he also was married to Afia Siddiqui, the Pakistani scientist who was arrested for allegedly shooting at some American soldiers and is now held in prison in America.